So being tuned into, what your internal self is telling you, that's one of the key things you would say for young women today?
Oh, absolutely. If there's something that you just can't put your finger on, you really need to step back and figure out what that something is, instead of just ignoring it and saying, you know what, this is good, this guy's nice, I deserve to be treated like this. And you can't just put what you want and need aside. And I did that, because when you read the book, you'll read of some of the bad history I'd had, and I just figured, maybe I didn't deserve to be happy. I had a little bit of an abusive upbringing with my stepfather, which I do mention a little bit. And I mentioned that because I think that's what went into my decision making. The reason I made the choices that I did was maybe I had lost what little bit of self-worth that I thought I had through my bad relationships, and I thought maybe this is what love's all about. I don't have to love him, but he loves me, so this is good.
Yeah.
And it's not good.
Now you know.
I know now.
You have a
yes.
beautiful husband now.
Oh, I do, absolutely. Yeah. If the love is not reciprocated and you both don't feel it, then there's something deadly wrong with that.
So, excellent advice, absolutely. And so, I call the stage where you got pregnant and you got married, I call that the sort of the autumn stage of the journey. Now, I love what happened on your wedding day. Do you want to share, the engagement story and the wedding day story? And
Yes, I lived in Florida all of my life, and where I grew up, we had snow one time in 40 years, and I believe it was in January, late January, early February. And my wedding day was March the 13th. And in Florida, in March, it's spring break. And the morning of my wedding, I woke up and my best friend was there, and she was calling out to me, "You've got to come see this." And I went to the window and it was snowing. And I mean, not just little flakes of snow, it was snowing in Florida in the middle of March. And my best friend looked at me, and we're holding our cups of coffee and we're looking at each other, and I said, I think maybe God's trying to tell me something, and we laughed it off. But perhaps there was something,
a bit of a message.
Yeah, there was a message there and then when I got to the church, I didn't own a coat, so we're putting on sweaters and doubling up jeans and socks, and we got to the church, and my brother was sick, and my photographer was sick, and one of the groomsmen had left his shoes at home, and none of the wedding guests were there because it was snowing in Florida, and people in Florida don't know what to do with that. So it was just, all these things kept happening, and my goodness, it's like I'm not supposed to do this. But I did. I went ahead.
And shortly after being married, you moved states, is that correct?
I did. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah. And at that point you were pregnant and at home. Can you tell me some of the signs that were coming to you at that point where things may not be all right in this relationship?
Well, there were some things. Once I was taken away from my support network, I think that it was a whole lot easier for him to do the things that he did, because the people around me who knew me would have noticed more. Like at this point, I was only phoning my mother once a week or so, and the friends that I had that were coming and going in my life were gone. So he wouldn't let me use my car, and I didn't know why that was. But he played it off. He said, "Atlanta traffic, you're not used to this. You're pregnant. There's lots of construction on the roads." And all these excuses that he would give me seemed very logical, and I thought, oh, he cares. He doesn't want me out driving around because he cares for my safety. And then things like my telephone would disappear, and I couldn't find it, and he would say, "Well, it must be your pregnancy hormones because you're just forgetting where you're putting it." And it wasn't that at all. He was taking and hiding the phone from me. And I'm not 100% sure why he was doing that. I don't know if he just wanted to completely cut me off from my family, or I don't know what the control thing with the phone was and with the car. I don't know where he thought I was going to go, but it was all a control thing, and that's when I started to notice things were not, I didn't understand that. And when I would ask about it, even though he would play it off, it wouldn't settle right with me.
Mm-hmm.
It used to, but the excuses just started sounding contrived, and it didn't make sense to me. And so I started questioning why.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't I use my car? And I would ask him, why can't I just take my car?
Mm-hmm.
But because it's dangerous out there, you're pregnant, and the road construction and the Atlanta traffic, and after a while that excuse it wasn't important to me anymore. I'm like, I want to take my car and go out.
And so the abuse that he was inflicting on you, the emotional, psychological abuse, it eventually did escalate to physical abuse, didn't it?
It did. And, once you start, when they've got control, you're fine. Your relationship is fine. If you don't question anything, if I didn't want to go anywhere, if I didn't want to use the phone, our relationship would have been fine. When I started to fight back, things would get unstable. He hid things from me and would take and hide things from me, and when I would find him and question him, if he couldn't come up with an excuse fast enough, he would get frustrated. And then that's when the verbal abuse started. He would yell at me, and then he would cry and apologize. And he would bump me real hard with his shoulder. He wouldn't hit me, he would just kind of brush past me and knock into me, or he'd kind of grab my arm. Little things that he just explained as desperate. I was just desperate, I was just upset, and he would cry. And that's how it started slowly becoming the verbal abuse. And then the physical abuse started very just little things, a little brush past, or he'd get mad and throw something, but he wouldn't throw it at me, or he'd hit the wall. He wouldn't hit me. So things were okay, but I knew it wasn't good, and I knew it was getting worse.
And so what was your break point? What was your point where you said, no more?
Well, I had a couple of those moments, but I was 8 hours from home.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a way to get home. I had no money because I had no job. And so I couldn't, even though I was unhappy and I knew this is not going well, I couldn't go anywhere. And then, it got so late into my pregnancy that I couldn't go anywhere because I was, I needed to stay close to where my doctor was. And then, of course, right after my son was born, I had a new baby. So, there were a few times when I told my mother, I can't do this. This isn't working out. And, I couldn't make the decisions to do anything at that time. I wasn't in a position to do so.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of breaking points in the book, some major lies, some major deceit that was going on. And kind of those things, I just kind of piled them on top of each other till we got to the top of the pile. And eventually, when he did actually physically assault me, that was when I finally was able to make the break, because I was able to physically have him removed from my home. But it took almost 5 years for that to happen.
5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And were you talking to anyone about your experience, like confiding, at least having that release, or was it all just being bottled up and you were trying to cope?
A little bit of both. My mother, of course, I spoke with her a lot about it. And being a victim of a really bad marriage too, she was good to talk to, but she coped and she stayed in for longer than I could. Her advice to me was, wait until you're at a point that you can make a clean break. You can't. I was trying to finish university, I was student teaching, I had a new baby, things were just, he wasn't a new baby anymore, he was 2. She's like, you can't just run off, you've got no place to go, you've got no support system, you've got, he's not going to let you stay in the house. So the decision to leave had been made, it just took forever to put together a way to actually do it. And it wasn't until the actual physical assault that we were able to actually get him out of the house, which I had not ever been able to do. I couldn't get him to leave the house more than a couple hours at a time. So, I never could pack a few boxes, and, I thought of every way possible to get out, and I couldn't. And, even though my mother agreed that I needed to get out, I didn't have a way to do that.